How's it going, guys? Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. Joining me, as he often does, is Nick Rice. Nick looks a little different today. It's not his fancy shirt, and it's not his brand new lighting. It's because Nick Rice is officially a season ticket holder now for the LA Chargers. And before we get into the draft breakdown and Aaron Rodgers wanting to leave Green Bay, the first thing I want to jump into is Nick had the chance recently to go down to the new Chargers Stadium and all that, and I think meet Justin Herbert. Was that supposed to be part of the plan? But that was, if you go on to social media, there's a bunch of pictures from this. So before we get into anything else, Nick, how was the trip down there in LA over the past weekend?
Yeah, it was awesome. I was able to see Justin Herbert. I was probably about 20 yards away from him. So
Okay.
yeah, I didn't quite get to meet him.
Okay. Was that part of it, or he was just there like waving at people because social distance and everything?
He was there answering fans' questions.
Okay.
Yeah, but we couldn't actually go down on the field. We
Sure.
were in the front rows. But
Did you get any questions in?
Yeah, we got some questions in. He's really excited for this year, and
Awesome.
Who isn't?
Mhm.
For the Chargers, that is no question the best stadium in the NFL. And I've been to about a half dozen, so I'm very familiar with quite a few NFL stadiums. That one is really good. So we're jazzed about this year, and Roger Goodell gave us a really nice little tidbit that NFL stadiums are expected to be at full capacity. So that'll be pretty nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, we keep hearing more and more college too. We keep hearing more and more places, are going to have full capacity. Up here in Jacksonville, UFC had a full capacity event, 15,000 people. AEW also in Jacksonville is going to have about 6,000 people sold out in Daly's place. So we're hearing more and more about this, and I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of by the time the NFL season starts, even preseason maybe, we're going to be pretty much back to full capacity. There might be a few states that are kind of like behind the pack, but I think, if California's opening up, I feel like everybody's opening up.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Watch out for the Chargers this year, guys. Watch out. And the home schedule, this might be the first year I go to multiple Charger games.
I would hope so. You have the tickets.
That's right, is ridiculous. I'm talking Cowboys, obviously the AFC West. I'm talking Packers, I'm talking Steelers and Browns. So they have some really nice opponents this year. It almost seems like if we were to hand pick the best opponents we could have chosen, this is the one.
So if there's games you don't go to, let me just give you a little bit of advice here as someone who's been a season ticket holder for a team for a long time. If you can't go to some of the biggest games, definitely sell them. You can almost make your money back on your ticket package if you do. If when the Chiefs come to town or something, if you can't make it, or the Cowboys or something, go on that ticket exchange and sell it, because you'll basically get your season ticket package for free if you play your cards right.
Right. If it even makes it there. I have quite a few buddies who actually buy it off me anyway.
Yeah. So you just got the one ticket, right, for the season?
Two, man.
All right. That's good.
Yeah, because that's the best way to kind of move them around, because everybody's got a spouse, everybody's got somebody they want to come with. Mm-hmm. So that's the perfect thing. We're right there, right behind the end zone, just up at the end of the lower deck. So
first game with the tickets, who's your +1? Have you figured that out? Is it going to be like a fever pitch where you raffle with your friends, or what?
I know, right? Fight to the death. It's going to be with my pops. I mean, you got to go with my dad.
That's the way to do it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's the big NFL guy right there. He also likes the Rams, which we'll have a whole other conversation with another time. But he also likes the Chargers, so I got to, have him there.
Awesome. Well, congrats on that, and to many great experiences out there. And then was it SoCom? Is that what it's called?
SoFi Stadium.
SoFi. I thought of it right.
That's fine. We didn't have any fans in it last year, so
that's true. That's true. But no, that's pretty awesome, and I think we will definitely hear more stories when the football season starts of your experiences down in there. I might try to make a Jaguar game or two, because it'd be the closest stadium to me. The Eagles don't play in Florida at all this year, so I wouldn't mind checking out one of those, but we'll see how that all goes.
I never was able to swim in that pool at Everbank.
I don't know that I'd want to. I could see the pools going away after this whole COVID nonsense, but
I wouldn't blame him. Yeah, that was pretty nasty walking by it. So
yeah. So the NFL draft was about a week ago now. All the kind of gradings and stuff have come in and everything for other people, so we can really look at it as a whole and not be too. It's really easy to overreact to the draft. So I always like to take a deep breath, give myself about the next weekend essentially to really break it down. But this year was a little interesting because right before the draft started, the draft is always the headline king of that weekend. There was something that rivaled it because I would say an hour or two before the draft started, and this is where we're going to start today, the news breaks that apparently, and I say apparently because it just kind of randomly happened, Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay. And this was apparently a headline that Schefter was like sitting on. He knew this before he dropped it, but decided to drop it now before the draft. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. But when you first heard this, like, it's a long time coming ever since like the Jordan Love draft and everything. Like, it's kind of deteriorating, and then it's heated up with Aaron Rodgers hosting Jeopardy. He's made it abundantly clear that he wants that to be his career after football, even if he has to juggle both for, the last couple of years of his career. But what was your opinions when you first heard this?
Well, first of all, with Jordan Love, I guess we don't know because, media wasn't able to look at practices last year, so they weren't able to evaluate Jordan Love. But I'm willing to go on this show right now and say Jordan Love is not a good player. Jordan Love is going to be a pretty nice backup quarterback in the NFL, and that's about it. Watching him at Utah State, to be honest, I never even thought he was an NFL prospect. Then again, that happens. Yeah. Guys randomly like Joe Burrow go from 5th round pick to 1st overall, and nobody blinks an eye because he's legit. He's that good. But yeah, I never thought Jordan Love was any good at all. And we were talking about this before the show. I would not be surprised if Aaron Rodgers plays every game this year because he just comes across as the type of guy that would complain about this sort of thing and just voice his frustrations, and then by the start of the season realize that there's no better situation that I could force myself into this year. So.
I agree with your Jordan Love take, but I just got flashbacks to you not being excited about Justin Herbert. But no, I agree. Yeah. Like he might be okay, but he's not Aaron Rodgers level. And I don't think Aaron getting out of Green Bay is about him being threatened by Jordan Love. There's people that are trying to look at it that way. Like, oh, he knows this kid's coming to take his spot. I don't think that's the case at all. When I first heard this news, because we all know Aaron Rodgers went to Cal. He's a California guy. I think they shoot Jeopardy. I don't know if it's in California, but I'm pretty sure it's on the West Coast. I thought that he wanted this out there to potentially make a play to get traded to the 49ers. That was my initial thought with the 3rd pick. The Packers wouldn't get sworn by their fans because they could get, Trey Lance or whoever they thought. I was really convinced that was the play and that was the whole reason to put it out when he put it out. I think if the Rams didn't make their play for Matthew Stafford, he would have easily been in a play for the Rams too, which, we can talk about their draft a little bit later. I think they're going to be rather good this year. And I think it has a lot to do with not having Jared Goff and having a guy like Matt Stafford. But I thought it was truly a play to get to the San Francisco 49ers. And now that, and I'm sure that phone call was made to some extent. I don't think it was a long phone call, but I'm sure feelers were put out there. And I think they were pretty set in what they wanted to do. I'm glad they went with who they went with and not Mac Jones, where everybody was, thinking it was going to go. We can talk about that later too. But you can't convince me unless the full story comes out down the line. I think this was a play to get to San Francisco that was not successful.
It's fascinating. Of course, he doesn't even know if he's getting Jeopardy. That's the crazy part. He could be saying all this. They choose Ken Jennings or some other guy, and then he's left almost in that awkward situation where I tried to cheat on you and I have no other place but to go back to the woman I cheated on. So there's my Colin Cowherd impression because he does that a lot. So this is just an awkward situation all the way around if they can't get San Francisco traded. And that seems to be the rumor around the NFL right now. Green Bay's Aaron Rodgers to San Francisco.
Because I think that's dead and buried now. I don't think you go get him now. You don't have the capital to get him now. The number 3 overall pick, that with a player or two or whatever like that can maybe make it work. Now I think it really comes down to Denver has really heated up as far as talks to there because it's the West side. It's not the West Coast, but it's Western compared to where he is. And Vegas too. Like it would not shock me for the Derek Carr John Gruden relationship has not been the best. That's pretty well documented. It would not shock me if John Gruden made a play, but that's about as west as he can go, I think.
Yeah, that's also kind of unfortunate if they go from, Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr because Carr is kind of approaching that back nine.
Mhm.
Like they would have to address the quarterback situation either way. At least with Trey Lance, you're getting a guy that you feel could stick around for a while.
I mean, if
So,
if let's say Green Bay makes that trade, um, then you have Jordan Love and Derek Carr, and if Jordan Love isn't ready, you at least know Derek Carr can play in the NFL.
mhm.
So you let him play for a year or two, maybe. But if Jordan Love isn't as good as Derek Carr, then you know I don't think you have to admit down the line that was a wasted pick.
Yeah, this is one of those things, and I think we just got to come out and say it. All right, we just have to be upfront about this because this is Aaron Rodgers throughout his whole life. When's the last time he's had a great relationship that's lasted? I mean, my goodness, it seems like everybody he knows has something of an issue with him over the next 5-10 years. It's
Yeah, I mean,
amazing to me.
his family relationship pretty well documented, not the best, and he had his
Mhm.
relationship with Danica Patrick that eventually ended. He's apparently whoever he's romantically involved with now, they're engaged to be married, whatever. So that one's working out. Good for you on that one, Aaron. But
Yeah,
in
yeah,
general, from there was the odd thing with Jordy Nelson, right? He's like, oh, I'd
yeah.
come out of retirement if Aaron asked me, and Aaron didn't ask him, which left him kind of holding the bag. Like, yeah, both
Yeah.
personal and professional. He has not been the easiest guys to get along with. And I don't know a whole lot about
Mhm.
Jeopardy, but the show is about smart people, and I'm sure there's smart people running it. I'm sure they see that. Like they don't have
Yeah, that's a
it's not
good
a one to
point.
one. They don't need to know football because it's still a business and it's still a business about people. So you can only imagine they see this and it's like, yeah, this guy doesn't really have a lot of relationships that last, personal or professionally. And
Mhm.
again, I'm not someone that watches Jeopardy every day. If he gets it, that might incline me to watch it every once in a while. But I could say that about a handful of hosts that they're trying out. So
For sure. Like, I'm a huge nerd, and this is gonna spoil it. If you guys haven't noticed by now, I'd question why you don't think I'm a nerd by this point. But Neil deGrasse Tyson
yes,
is my favorite guy that I want on that
Mhm.
show. Do I think it's gonna happen? Probably not. He has so many other things going on. But
I was gonna say he's busy like getting to the moon and all his physics stuff. But I would
whatever
love
that is.
my counter to that would be someone like LeVar Burton, who just everyone knows from Star Trek and Reading Rainbow,
Oh
and
yeah,
he's
yeah, yeah.
he's just a fixture in American culture already, and I think he would fit perfectly into that slot. But did you think
I
you
don't
were
know
gonna
him
get
as
your?
much.
Yeah, but
So
I mean, he's just someone kind of like Drew Carey does. What is it? The Price is Right. Like it was a perfect
Mhm.
example of like just a guy that everybody knew that
Yeah.
you turned on TV and you're like, oh, that guy. So like it'd be perfect for that.
Yeah.
Um,
But I don't think Jeopardy is trying their hardest to bring in new fans. I feel like
yeah.
the fans that would watch it, and then
Mhm.
other fans that would, tune in for an Aaron Rodgers,
Yeah.
they would probably for a week love it. But you really gotta love that sort of trivia thing. And
Yeah.
honestly, Jeopardy is one of those shows. It's like it's great, but I'm one of those people. Actually, I'm one of those people that are willing to say Jeopardy. I'm not really that big of a fan of.
We need a sports version of Jeopardy. I know that they have like sports topics from time to time, but
Yeah, and it looks
ESPN,
horrible. These
ESPN, yeah,
guys
because
are
these people are if they're smart enough to know all the other topics, they don't. I remember there's a brutal one out there. You can look like they had to describe like what if like the answer was like first down and like they didn't know what it.
they
He's
didn't know it.
like um you know Landry was the legendary coach for what franchise, and no one knew the answer was like Dallas Cowboy. Like it's pretty
Right.
brutal. You can go over and watch it, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah. But no, I think sports. There needs to be a sports version of Jeopardy. Obviously, you'd have to give it a different name unless you like, like make them do a second show off that. I think that'd be entertaining. I'm not saying I would dominate that, but I think I'd be pretty good
Oh,
at
yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
especially the topic of like this player went to what college. I'm usually pretty damn good at that. So that's one thing that would be good.
I
The
mean,
other
you're
thing
not
I
as
had
good
thought
as
of,
me at it on that.
I'm pretty good with the colleges. I mean, there's other things. I'm not great at like yards and like stats. Like what's the rushing
Yeah.
record? I know who it is, but I don't know the number. Like I'm not always
The
good with the
number.
number of a record, but no, the college thing I got for sure.
All right,
The
we're
other,
gonna
yeah,
have to try and challenge our wits on that.
yeah, we're gonna have to do some trivia at some point down the line.
That sounds good to me.
So I went over to Kramer's house for the draft. Shout out to Kramer, host of the Jags cast, and he was obviously in for a
Kramer.
really good night of his team. Of course, presumably slam dunk drafting Justin Lawrence. And he let us know right off the bat that if something happened, that if the Jags did not draft Lawrence, that everybody had to leave. The party was no longer happening at his house, and everybody's out. And I said, okay, fair enough, but let me throw this at you. What if you get the call from Green Bay of Aaron Rodgers to Jacksonville? And he's like, that might be the only thing that could happen that would keep everybody here. Obviously, that didn't happen. And I don't think that would work for either side, really, because that puts Rodgers no closer to the West Coast. It might be a little easier to fly out of Jacksonville than Green Bay to go places, but like it was, I was just, poking fun at him a little bit because I really thought that he, I don't think he was trying to go to Chicago. That's another team with a quarterback need that would have had the draft capital and stuff. But no, very interesting. And, it doesn't paint Aaron Rodgers in a great light.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole time, while this is all going on, he's at the Kentucky Derby and he's trying to have a good time. And apparently he supposedly didn't know that the news broke. And he said he was disappointed that the news broke. And my thing is always nothing ever leaks on accident. Like whoever was the one that leaked it knew exactly what they were doing. And whether it's his camp or the Packers, let's make him look bad. That way, if we have to trade him, it looks like they forced his hand. Whoever leaked this, it was not on accident.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. In the clutch, either conference championship game or Super Bowl, would I rather have Aaron Rodgers or Eli Manning? I have to actually think about that because Aaron Rodgers, for as great as he is, league MVP for the third time, this guy, yet again in a big time playoff game, just makes one error at the worst time to cost his football team. And he's great.
Yeah.
But we didn't really see that much with Eli Manning, in crunch time. Regular season, he made a whole lot of errors, a lot of errors. But that's kind of the conversation, not just Eli, but a number of guys where it's like Aaron Rodgers always seems, maybe it's just preparation, maybe it's just nerves and anxiety, but come big time playoff games, there's always just a little bit missing from this guy.
It would be interesting if he does end up getting traded. I'll end it on this. Has anyone ever traded a reigning league MVP like the next year? If he plays like you've predicted, and I'm not even disagreeing necessarily, that he's going to play all of this year in Green Bay and then maybe get traded. But it'd be interesting if he gets traded in this offseason if a reigning league MVP has ever been traded.
That's a great Sports Jeopardy question.
It is Sports Jeopardy, man. Maybe we should host it. We could set it up ourselves.
I know. Hey, we have relationships that last. All right.
There you go. So, unlike Aaron Rodgers, apparently. So professionally and personally. But so to get into the draft a little bit, I already touched on Trevor Lawrence going number 1. I knew they were going to do this, and I don't mean the pick. I mean something else. They've known who they've wanted for months and months, and they still took the whole freaking 10 minutes to make the pick. This bothers me more than anything in the world. And all teams do it. I'm not even picking on Jacksonville, but for whatever reason, they feel the need to do this.
I feel like maybe they're just holding out hope that somebody's going to give them 4 first-round picks. That's literally my only explanation. I still think it's ridiculous.
There was only one year, and I believe it was the Dolphins. The year it was like the 1-15. Yeah, they announced that like the week ahead of time.
Yep,
and I'm like, yeah, like congrats to that. Like that's how. And that's not always going to be the case. Like there's years where like, oh, it can go one way or the other, but no, we knew what this one was. So here's my question with Trevor Lawrence, and I'm not doubting he's probably going to be a pretty good pro, but this was my same opinion of like Tua. The years that they won national championships, they were not the day one starter of that season. Something happened. They came in, they blew the country away, and they won a national championship. And then they would come back another year. And, for Tua, I guess it would have been losing to Lawrence, and then Lawrence lost to Joe Burrow. So while these guys are national champions and you can't take it away from them, we have not seen these guys from a day one starter win a title. And I don't know if that means anything. It's not nothing, as I like to say, but it's a unique way to look at it. It makes it like it makes the guy human because it's like we have not seen them do that entire stretch. But overall, I think Trevor Lawrence for the Jaguars, it's an upgrade. I think they'll have a comparable backup in Gardner Minshew, which is good. I think Lawrence can still learn some stuff from Minshew, even though they come from 2 totally different worlds as far as their accomplishments in college and stuff. And they overloaded not overloaded, but they, got some offensive firepower in this draft we can talk about later. But it's not a question of was this the right pick, because to me it was the only pick to go. But my question for you is, how well do you think this works in Jacksonville? Because it's not, as we've seen before, the easiest place to succeed. Not everyone's Blake Bortles. Not everybody can bring this team to an AFC Championship game. But where do you see Lawrence? Let's just say this: first season here, his rookie year, how many wins do the Jags have? Keep in mind, it's 17 games this year, not 16.
Yeah. Well, first of all, nobody can lead the AFC in rushing as a quarterback, quite like your boy from Central Florida. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I would argue that with your nothing, something, or everything comment earlier about not winning a title,
winning a title starting the entire year, because they definitely won titles. Season. Yeah.
I think another thing that's something, not everything, is that whole comment of I could do a bunch of other things, and football is not my everything.
Mm-hmm. Has he seen that way to you? Does he say that?
He did say that. Yeah, that was quoted. That he was saying it wouldn't bother me if the football thing didn't work out. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Okay, right before the draft. Obviously that story wasn't big enough to reach you, but it was something. I was like, that's a weird comment to make.
Well, there was a similar story. I forget the name of the guy who went number 1 in the NBA draft. That guy from Georgia, who basically said the same thing. And it really bothered. I forget his name, but like he did the same thing. He's like, I like basketball. It's not video games. I love video games, but I like basketball. It was something weird like that. But so I remember that story. I did not hear Lawrence say that. But
right. That was the reason why Chandler Jones is no longer with the Patriots. He was, video games. You like playing video games? Yeah, forget that. I think they win probably 8 games this year, which is a huge improvement. Urban Meyer is a freaking wizard. You just wonder how many years that project is going to last. So that's a whole other conversation. But Trevor Lawrence, I think, is going to be a good pro. But some of those things you heard before kind of concern you. And I think that he had been praised as the best player for so long that I think it almost creates a level of complacency. And that probably is why you saw this guy excel so at such a high level as a freshman, and then his numbers kind of plateaued this whole time in Clemson. He didn't exactly, come out like gangbusters last year either. So, I wouldn't be too concerned, but I think that Trevor Lawrence being the greatest quarterback of all time conversation probably is a little unrealistic.
I don't really hold last year against anybody just because of all the crap they had to go through. Now, if you fell off a cliff statistically, then that's something. But you used the perfect word, is he really did plateau. That's what I mean. Like this guy came in, took the nation by storm, and kind of stayed at that level. Granted, that level is really, really high, but we never saw him. He came in as an 8 and never really maybe went to an 8.5. You know what I mean? Like something like that. And something similar, like we've seen that, like Jameis Winston did that, right? He had an amazing, redshirt freshman year at Florida State, won national championship, had another great year and lost to Oregon in the first playoff game ever. And, it was just more of the same. And when you see somebody so great, so quick, it's really hard to not plateau, because what I'm doing works. Why would I do anything differently?
Yeah. I think, Jameis Winston's a good comparison. I think he's going to end up being better than him. But in terms of him becoming the best quarterback in the NFL at a time, I think the formula, and this is a formula that I kind of wavered away from last year with Justin Herbert. I think usually the quarterbacks who perform the best, their college arc went a lot like that. Than like this. Very rarely do you see guys, make that, because in the NFL, everybody is really talented. So it's very, very hard to differentiate yourself when you don't exactly, love working out every single day. So we saw that with Justin Herbert. He exploded with Oregon last year and became a star. Same thing with Joe Burrow. And until he got hurt, he was really good with Cincinnati.
Yeah, absolutely. You've seen these guys kind of work up to things, and it makes it, a little easier to see them, continue to the desire to improve is still there. It's not like I'm already this good. I'm just going to take what I know and put it against what other people do kind of thing.
In the NFL, if you only had 4 years of eligibility, I think Trevor Lawrence would be an absolute GOAT, but that's NFL's a little bit different.
Yeah. I have them right around 7 wins, 7-10, because again, 17 games this year, which is going to take me forever to really, so weird. I don't know that I love it either, but
to me, I think they're going to try to, move it up to 18 at some point.
I actually said this in my draft preview I did with Doug, but I just want it to be an even number. Like if you really have to bump it up, then make it 18. But no, I'm interested to see how, he handles that and how he works with Urban Meyer, because while he's been a great coach in places, he kind of goes in that Aaron Rodgers category of doesn't uphold his relationships at I don't know about personally, but professionally all the time. I mean, his exit to Florida was a little shady. His exit from Ohio State was a little shadier. And I'm interested to see. It always works this way too, right? Like the difference between coaching in college and coaching in the pros is you're now coaching grown men. And it's a little bit different than coaching 18, 19-year-old kids. And if you can adjust to that, you're good. But if you try to treat these grown men like college kids, that never works out. And we've seen examples of that.
And that's actually pretty funny, the Aaron Rodgers comparison too, because I would think Urban Meyer, when you think about just how successful he is and how, talented he is at recruiting and X's and O's and stuff, you'd think, oh, he probably was neck and neck with Nick Saban on championships.
You would think,
Not really the case. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Moving to the second pick here. This was all but certain as long as, Trevor Lawrence did go to Jacksonville. Zach Wilson is a guy who really jumped up the board. I think when the draft season started, the off season, if you will, he was the third, maybe the fourth best quarterback. But by the day of the draft, he was number 2, which, he didn't throw any more touchdowns in that time. He did not throw any more interceptions in that time. People just watched the film for the 300th time and saw what they liked. And as someone who watched him play against my Knights, granted it was a depleted Knights defense, he absolutely lit up the Knights. And I definitely saw a pro level guy in there, similar to like when we had to play Joe Burrow in the Fiesta Bowl. You're like, yeah, this guy can sling it. Jets, again, not a great position to succeed right away. With Sam Darnold, I never really saw anything that made me think he would succeed. I always see a little bit here in Zach Wilson. And if I'm a Jets fan, as I probably would have been my entire life, I'm cautiously optimistic here. But I'm way more optimistic than cautious than I would have been with our previous quarterback drafted only a few years ago.
Well, I'm sure the Jets wanted to get in front of this. They are the first NFL team ever to draft a 14-year-old in the first round. I don't know if you saw him against the other guys. Mm-hmm. My goodness, he looks freaking young.
He looks like a Disney Channel actor in that suit up there compared to everybody else that was around him.
I know. I think he'll be fine. I think that number 2, he probably was a little bit overdrafted based off of need. Mm-hmm. And he kind of is a pretty significant project because, you hear from everybody and they say, yeah, he just every now and then makes some pretty big mistakes mechanically and whatnot. I'm sure he'll be pretty good though, because, his tape really, really, really shines, but you just kind of hope that the Jets are able to have a situation that is stable enough for this guy, because I'll give Sam Darnold this, and I don't think he's going to do very much. Where did he get traded to?
Panthers.
I don't think he's going to be all that great of a quarterback, because right away the Panthers are looking at different quarterback options reportedly. So
that's true.
That tells you how much they're confident in that guy. But and what they gave up for him, a 6 and a 4.
Yeah.
So they didn't exactly sell the farm for him. I think Zach Wilson is going to a slightly better situation maybe than Sam Darnold had, but it's the same type of thing, It's like Joe Burrow. You feel bad for him. It's like if he went to a team like the Chargers, he probably would have been pretty great last year, but it's hard to succeed when you're getting hit every other play. So good luck to Zach Wilson, but I think this year's going to be pretty rough.
Do you think
they got rid of Robbie Anderson?
Yeah.
His only Pro Bowler on the offensive side. So.
Do you think if like Sam Darnold had went to the Chargers that it would have, made him pop a little more, or are you like me and you don't really see a lot of value in him anyway?
Yeah, a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think it would have been better than the Jets, but situation is something.
Mhm.
But yeah, you can't rescue that project. All
Yeah.
right, Sam Darnold, man.
To talk situations in comparison for these first two picks, I do think Trevor Lawrence is in a better position than Wilson on the Jets for all the reasons we just talked about with Lawrence. And the one I didn't quite, that I forgot that I just remembered now, you look at that division, right? And you got the Colts are in the let's save Carson Wentz's career business, which I think could totally work out. I would not be shocked at all if Carson maybe doesn't get back to like MVP form, but becomes a really good quarterback for them in that system that they play. Would not shock me at all.
Yeah.
But you get past that, you got Tennessee, who I think their peak, I think they have peaked as a team. I think they're still going to be a pretty good team. But I don't see them back in the AFC Championship game necessarily. And then you have the Houston, which is definitely a dumpster fire right now. We don't know if Deshaun Watson's going to play. So I do think it makes it's a lot easier for them to win games within the division a little bit easier than the Jets. Obviously, the Patriots, we don't quite know what we're getting, but the Bills are really good, and the Dolphins do appear to be on a bit of an up. So I do think when you look at the division, which is definitely another thing to factor in when it comes to rookie quarterbacks, the Jags have a little more of an opportunity to make noise than the Jets do, I think.
Yeah, I do not know. I have no opinion on Davis Mills, Houston's third-round quarterback choice. So I'm not sure if he's going to be great or not. But considering non-first-round quarterbacks usually don't work, I am skeptical. But when it comes to the Titans, I think they actually made one of the big draft day steals. Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech is a top 5 player who got hurt multiple times with back injuries. So he fell all the way down to, I believe, 21, and Tennessee snagged him. And I think Tennessee, considering they drafted Derrick Henry in the second round a few years ago, they're pretty good at drafting guys outside of the top 10 to pan out. And then when it comes, obviously, Houston's a mess. And then Indianapolis, listen, they made the playoffs winning that division with Phillip Rivers. And I cannot tell you how many people are just convinced that Carson Wentz is a better player for this year than Phillip Rivers was last year. And if I were to tell you his numbers, he was like just outside the top 10 in quarterback rating. I'm telling you, I think unless Carson Wentz really, really shocks me, I don't think the Colts are replicating just how good they were last year. And they got rid of a couple of offensive linemen too. So Carson Wentz, I think, will be a good quarterback. But Indianapolis had a really good quarterback situation last year, regardless of what people tell you. Phillip Rivers was a good QB last season.
I think the goal is basically that, is for Carson to be in the ballpark of what Phillip Rivers, and if that's a little bit farther of a goalpost for some to think than others, I do think that would be the goal. It's like, hey, this is what Phillip did last year. We're going to aim for this year. Like, which, granted, that's a good goal to have, because we're not telling you to be like the MVP of the league or anything, because he was far from that. So I think it's an obtainable goal to at least strive for. I think it would make sense for that. Looking at the number 3 pick, we had heard for the weeks leading up to it. I think the last show we did together, it was a topic of conversation that for whatever reason, the Niners had apparently fallen in love with Mac Jones.
No,
and I was looking for the reason why, and I could still be looking and I wouldn't have found it, because clearly, and there was a thought out there that maybe it's a smoke screen, right? Maybe they're just telling that to shake up boards, and maybe they did actually like what they see, but they ended up going with Trey Lance at number 3. There's plenty of people who thought Justin Fields was the third best quarterback. More on him later, where he ended up going. But I kind of like this pick here to San Francisco. They're a very run-heavy team, and if you want this really athletic guy that played FCS football to come along gradually, you have Jimmy Garoppolo in place. I don't think Lance starts week 1 necessarily, so he is someone that you can bring along, not at a snail's pace, but if he only plays 5, 6, 7 games this year, it'll be right on schedule, I think, for them. So overall, if you are a Niners fan, and I've talked a lot of Niners football with one of my bosses at work, he's a Niners fan, and he was trying to talk himself into wanting Mac Jones, and I'm like, anytime you have to talk yourself into a pick, it's not the right pick. If you should not have to talk yourself, especially if it's a top 3 pick. Maybe if it's like the middle of the road, you can be all right, not bad. But I think this was a great pick, much better pick than if they went Mac Jones. I'm interested to see Garoppolo was quoted saying like he doesn't mind being like that mentor for Lance. I don't know what you say other than that, even if that's not how you feel. But overall, I think they made the right choice here. If they're going to go quarterback, taking him over. You can argue maybe they should have taken Fields. A lot of people have become fans of him. But I think the Niners made the right pick with the true third best quarterback available.
Well, for Kyle Shanahan being so quiet, he put on one heck of a smokescreen because I was about 50-50 on who they would pick, Mac Jones and the guy they ended up choosing from North Dakota State.
Yep.
A decent track record from that school. And I think their offensive lineman that got picked later in the first round, I think he'll end up being a pretty nice player. I got three teams in the first round who I believe finished the day happy of the quarterback they chose. Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, and San Francisco, Trey Lance is 2, and I have a spoiler for 3, and you'll hear it a little bit later in this show. I think Trey Lance is going to be great. His one season, he was 28 touchdowns, 0 picks. That's pretty darn good. Yes, North Dakota State is like the Alabama of D2, just in their conference. They just crush everybody. To me, I think Trey Lance has the type of character where he may not be the greatest talent, but he's a guy that's so invested in the craft. He was, recruited at these top level schools to play like wide receiver, defensive back, stuff like that. And because he chose North Dakota State, because he wanted to be a quarterback and he earned his way to where he is, I think that attitude and work ethic alone is going to make him a good player. Is he going to be a great player? I'm not sure. But in terms of intangibles, he's like a, flying colors past every test. So I think he's going to be a good player. And I think San Francisco, regardless of what his numbers are, he's going to pan out in some way, shape, or form.
I agree that he might not become a great player, but based on the way San Francisco was built and that they were able to go to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo, they don't necessarily need a great player the way they're built right now. So maybe he's just a little more athletic. Maybe he hits that deep ball just a little bit better than Garoppolo. Maybe at best if Garoppolo's a B, maybe this kid's a B plus, right? And could be the difference maker.
Yeah. As long as he can hit that deep ball late in a football game, I'm sure he'll be just fine.
And this is a year that, I'm very much looking forward to a little bit of preseason because it might be the only time we see some of these guys play. So at least until late in the year. So I'm looking forward to that a little bit.
I still don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure there's only 2 preseason games this year.
Which I'm fine with. That's still plenty to
I think that's
some guys, it's either 2 or 3. It's not 4. We know that.
You know? I don't
know. I don't know. I've tried to look it up before, but maybe they'll be a little bit more clear on it down the line here. Moving down the line a little, we're going to pick up the pace after this pick, I think. This one probably won't even take too long either. On the latest episode of Drafting the Best Available, starring the Atlanta Falcons, they take Florida tight end Kyle Pitts. You can't complain about this. There was talk of them going quarterback, but if you want to, squeeze the last couple productive years of football life out of Matt Ryan, this is how you do it. You get the genetic freak that is Kyle Pitts. I don't know what else to say. Interesting thing about it with that new single-digit number rule, which I don't know that I've got your opinion on yet. We can pause and talk about that for a second. Apparently going to be wearing number 8 for the Falcons, so that'll be interesting.
Number 8?
Yeah.
Nice.
I thought he would just stick with 84. I don't know if that's retired for Atlanta. Maybe that's the reason, because that's old Roddy White's number back in the day. So maybe that's the reason.
Interesting. Tony Gonzalez wore double 8. So I think that's a pretty nice comp because, Gonzalez was a really quick and agile tight end at like 260, something like that. So Kyle Pitts is just ridiculous. They're saying he's Calvin Johnson, just an absolute freak. I think he's Tony Gonzalez 2.0. This guy is a great, great player. If he doesn't end up becoming, multi-Pro Bowl, all-pro player, I would be totally shocked. This guy's ridiculous.
Because you talk about a guy, like while the Atlanta Falcons as a whole might not be a great team right now, he's going to have a really productive year considering he has Matt Ryan throwing him football that for most of his career, he has had tight ends he can count on. So he's going to make this guy one of those guys really quickly, I think.
By the way, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
So jazzed about one of my former Alabama player, Julio Jones, talks about him getting traded on draft day for a 2nd-round pick. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
He has the most receiving yards per game in NFL history. Trading him for a 2, he's been dealing with injuries, but couple him with Kyle Pitts, that is a ridiculous 1-2 tandem. And
What?
whoever else they have there, I think Calvin Ridley's there too. A couple
Yep.
other nice B players at wide receiver. So yeah, he's going to be great. Kyle Pitts.
I think a lot of that came down to like someone like AJ Green, right? That was from the same draft, was able to walk in free agency and sign with Arizona. And he's someone that I'm, rooting for to kind of have a little bit of a resurgence later in his career, also battling with injuries, much like Julio Jones was at least last year. I'm going to lump these next two picks together because they're almost the same story. You got Jamar Chase, wide receiver LSU, reuniting with his college quarterback, Joe Burrow, at the Bengals. There was plenty of people, me being one of them, that thought they should have went offensive lineman here. If you don't believe me, ask Joe Burrow's knee if that's the correct choice. But,
Yeah.
I mean, you could go either way. I think they end up going O-lineman in the second round. So, like, if you're going to go weapon here, you definitely need to go O-line in that second one. And then to keep that same storyline going, Jalen Waddle of Alabama reuniting with Tua down in Miami. And later when the Eagles pick, it's a similar story where you have Jalen Hurts and was it, how do you say his name? Devontae Smith. That one always throws me off. So basically it was a really interesting first year or storyline for the first round that 3 wide receivers reunite with their college quarterbacks in the draft.
That's
a very unique story to me.
It was the first time since it was like 2000 or something. And among the 3, one of them was Tim Couch and whoever they drafted that year.
Okay.
So not exactly the shiningest of company, but I think Jamar Chase is going to shine in the NFL.
Agreed.
AJ Green prototype. Jalen Waddle reminds me a lot of Tavon Austin. Where he's just small but super athletic, but it's really, really hard to use a guy that small. Cincinnati picked up a Jackson Carman out of Clemson in the second round at offensive line. But I'm with you. I think if the Bengals didn't have Jamar Chase on the board, and it's a really rare circumstance that not only was he just an absolute unblockable wide receiver, but he also clearly worked with Joe Burrow. So that's just, I believe, a little too much not to take him.
I always wonder, if there's like, obviously Joe Burrow's the man in Cincinnati. He might be a rookie going into his second year, but he's the man. So like, I wonder how much he was like, hey, if we're not going O-line to the second round, go get my guy. We already have chemistry. Like, I always wonder in these cases, and there's a similar thing with Jacksonville taking the Clemson running back late in the first round. If he was like, hey, man, like, let's get this going. Let me hand off to a guy that I've been handing off to for 3 years. Like, that comfortability's got to mean something. So, so we'll get to Smith when we get down to pick 12, but out of Waddle and Chase, who do you see having the better career? You seemed pretty high on Chase there.
Yeah, Chase, all the way. I think he's going to be awesome.
Detroit, we'll jump around here a little bit. Detroit taking the first offensive lineman off the board, which is something that Matthew Stafford probably would have liked to hear a little more in the past couple of years. Here's a stat for you. Detroit has had 1 Pro Bowl lineman in the past 20 years. So clearly a need needed to be addressed to keep Jared Goff or whoever starts for them upright, as they try to right the ship in Detroit.
One other thing, I mean, how many 100-yard rushers did they have in Matthew Stafford's whole career? Was it like 3 or something like that?
Maybe I was going to say 1, but it might be 2 or 3. Yeah, not a lot, not many.
And they had decent running backs, so that tells you what that offensive line was.
And even in years where they didn't have a star running back, there are years that they had a pretty good running back like committee, So for sure. Definitely running backs that can move the ball, but if no one's blocking for you, it doesn't really work out too well. Couple of corners go 8 and 9. We have Jace Horn, the son of former Saints wide receiver Joe Horn, I found out later on, from South Carolina, going to the Panthers, and Patrick Surtain from your Crimson Tide going to Denver. Out of those 2 picks, who do you think got the better player?
Who do you think I'm going to choose? I think he's a great player, man. I think, both of them have, lines from the NFL from their parents. So I think that's actually pretty cool. JC Horn and Patrick Surtain. But I'm going Patrick Surtain here because he just has freakish ability. He really jumped off the screen as a freshman in Tuscaloosa. So I believe that he's going to become a really nice staple. And Denver, if there's one thing they can draft, man,
it's corners.
Corner. So
you're not wrong.
They made the right choice. Then again, the Panthers too with Josh Norman a couple years ago. So
We mentioned the luck of like Alabama wide receivers like Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, and then hopefully some of these guys pay off. There's almost an opposite effect for Bama corners. D Milner and stuff comes to mind. So hopefully he can break that trend here. And like you said, if a corner is going to work out anywhere, it might be Denver.
Yeah, for sure.
Then we're on to number 10, which is actually a trade up from the Eagles that were sitting at 12 when the day started. There's a story within this story here. They traded with Dallas to jump New York because it appeared that New York wanted Devontae Smith, ended up taking him, and there's, that's a story within itself.
I know you watched this, Phil, but that Giants fan,
I've seen
viral Giants fan.
I only have one comment.
Philly traded?
I don't know who that guy is. I've never seen him before. I don't watch Giants YouTubers. That guy might have 1 million followers and I don't, which is fine. But my first thought on that dude is that is the most Southern sounding New York Giant fan I've ever heard in my life. So, a dude must have grew up in like Mississippi or one of the Carolinas and is just randomly a Giants fan, which, hey, I'm the Eagles fan of Florida, so no shade thrown. I'm just saying it was really interesting to hear that guy talk so Southern and freak out about the Giants pick. I know. I kind of made my opinions known on this on Twitter and stuff, so I'll just say it here. When we were sitting at 6, I would have been happy with this pick. So when we went to 12 and then went back up to 10, being able to get him at 10, like I'm happy. I think he's a playmaker. We've whiffed on receivers the past couple times. We've drafted him high. We've never really gotten one this high up there. Heisman Trophy winner, of course, and that doesn't always translate to pro success. So you kind of mentioned it as an afterthought, but I'm interested to see. Obviously, he's reconnected with Jalen Hurts. They have some form of chemistry to some degree. Obviously, he wasn't the full-time starter by the time he got in there. It was a back and forth between two and everything. But I think we got a good player. I'm excited to see him in preseason. That's another guy. He's going to be rocking number 6. He's going to keep his college number, which this is a good cutoff time to. I gave my opinions on this last time. I like the idea of more freedom in the numbers for jerseys and stuff. I don't want it to get too out of line. I don't want my running back wearing number 74 or something. But like, what's your opinion on the number kind of making it closer to the college number system?
Yeah, I think that's a great cutoff where they have it, where just the DBs, running backs, receivers, linebackers, you could wear single digits. I think that's a great cutoff right there. So D-line would get a little crazy. I do think it's kind of cool when you see like a freakish Jadeveon Clowney, like let's just say he wears number 2 or something. That'd be kind of interesting. I don't know what exactly to think of Devontae Smith because, he's obviously his production is ridiculous. And if he ends up becoming one of the best receivers ever, I wouldn't be totally surprised because his production was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But it's just the size. That's the only thing I look at. And I'm like, man, he got hurt in college. And usually when you get hurt in college, you get hurt in the pros. But obviously Philly, they didn't mind with Deshaun Jackson being short, small, all that stuff.
I think he's the perfect comp. I mean, Deshaun Jackson is one of my favorite Eagles of all time. I almost I think the ceiling for him, right? Devontae Smith could be Deshaun Jackson with a slightly better route tree. I think he
has an amazing route.
Yeah. Tree. So like Deshaun, like you never complained about his routes, but his route was I'm going to go as fast as I can over here because this guy can't do it as fast as me. Whereas Devontae Smith, I think the route tree is obviously a little more. That's the ceiling. I would think the floor could be the way Tavon Austin's NFL career ended up. Was just a good playmaking, receiver.
I would be shocked. Yeah, everybody loves the Miami draft, but to me, I would be shocked if Waddle turns out to be a better pro than Smith because it's one of those other picks where, we saw it last year with Henry Ruggs to Oklahoma. As soon as the Raiders picked him, that's not working out. I immediately thought that. I feel like Miami just outthought the room. Smith was more productive. Smith had the better character. Smith had all these other amazing traits, but a Waddle, I believe, is like 15 pounds heavier. That's literally the only thing they have on him. And Smith is taller too, so that also pans well, more length and all that. But
and then the Raiders come back too. They get Hunter Renfrow from Clemson, who was the man in college, and he hasn't really he's played okay for them so far, but like two guys with just great college pedigrees that you're still waiting to see him pop in the NFL.
For sure, for sure. So when it comes to Smith, I just believe they didn't outthink the room. Here's production, and I'm betting on production working out in the NFL. Literally, my only concern is the size, because that is small. I believe he's like 165.
He was so at the combine he was 166, and that's obviously when everybody freaked out about his weight. My initial question was, well, how much did he weigh when he caught like 5 touchdowns in the national championship? Because
Yep,
clearly he can play it that way. I'm looking at his like little profile on NFL.com. They got him at 170 now, so maybe he's already beefing up. Who knows? If he can be 177 by the season, that might help a little bit. We're gonna jump here now to 11, where the Bears trade up to take Justin Fields. I think this was the right move. They needed someone,
Yes.
Contrary to popular belief, I don't think Andy Dalton is QB1 material. I think if he was ever going to rekindle his starting role, he had the chance last year when Dak went down. Dallas was loaded with talent, and then he immediately got hurt too. I think there was a chance that he could have had them go on a little bit of a run if he'd have stayed healthy. He didn't. I'm not saying Justin Fields starts game 1, but if I'm a Bears fan, I'm pretty happy with this.
This is my number 3 pick of quarterbacks where teams are happy to thrilled about the player they chose. I'm not saying, exactly how great he's going to be. I just think Justin Fields is the type of guy, and Phil, you've been talking about this for months leading up to the draft, where players fall and rise having not thrown any more passes than they did at the end of college. And Justin Fields was on the wrong end of that sort of spectrum, where he fell so hard from being as good or just as half a step below Trevor Lawrence to all of a sudden being the 4th quarterback in the draft. How after 2 months did both Zach Wilson and Trey Lance skyrocket that high, to me, is baffling. I think he is the 2nd best quarterback in this draft, and he got picked 4th. Chicago traded a lot for him, but who cares? I think he's going to be not just QB1 this year. I think he's going to be great.
I mean, if I'm Justin Fields, I'm much happier in Chicago than I was going to be with the Jets. So to me, you're going to make a little less money off the top, but you got a much better chance of getting that big money second contract in Chicago. I mean, if Mitch Trubisky can bring you to playoff games and put you in position to win some games and stuff, and if Nick Foles can beat Tom Brady in New England as a member of the Bears, like this kid's got all the opportunity to be productive there as well. So, if I'm Chicago, I'm happy. If I'm Justin Fields, I'm also happy because it's a much better position than going to the Jets, and maybe not a better position than San Francisco. I think they are, when healthy, a better team. But I overall, I'd be happy if I was them. This next pick, we're basically going to get to 13, so Nick can talk about his pick, and then we're going to kind of fast forward here a little bit. But this next pick, I should have known it was going to happen, because after 8 or 9 years of having to watch a guy like Sean Lee, who I loved watching at Penn State, have played his entire NFL career without me being able to root for his success as a member of the Cowboys. The minute he retires, they say, don't worry, Phil, we're going to draft the next great Penn State linebacker. The Dallas Cowboys get Micah Parsons, the guy I think is an absolute monster. Apparently it's where he wanted to go the whole time. On the inside the draft thing, he's sitting there with his phone. He goes, if it's Dallas, I'm going to cry and stuff like that. So, congrats to him and everything. He's going to, again, back to the jersey number, he's going to wear number 11. It's going to be interesting seeing a number 11 running around a middle linebacker for Dallas moving forward.
Man, the NFL. I mean, it's the no fun league, and all of a sudden here they are.
It's a little fun now, yeah.
Yep, celebration rules, adding jersey numbers 1 through 9. That is pretty cool. Maybe one day the NFL will add a 0.
I would love that. They used to have double zeros, I remember at one time. I forget who it was. There's a guy for the Raiders back in those days.
Jim Otto at center.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, someone definitely did
a Sports
have
Jeopardy
that
question.
Yeah, there you go. The moment the Nick's been waiting for here at number.
Wait, hold on. With Micah Parsons, I'm just with you. I think he's going to be, a star in with the Cowboys, but it's hilarious. They address the defense, sure, but the position that they are the most comfortable with going into next year anyways. They're still going to be horrible at D-line and also at cornerback. So, yeah, good luck, Dallas. Micah Parsons might end up being pretty good. Part of the reason why is he might end up having like 200 tackles. I mean, I'm sure he's Paul Posluszny feeling a lot like that guy, where it's like, my goodness, every single play is going right to me. So
He's
good luck,
cross.
Micah Parsons.
He's gonna be a cross between Paul Posluszny and like Luke Kuechly. I think he's gonna.
Yeah.
I think because Posluszny was a very good, I think borderline Pro Bowl linebacker through his whole career. So to me, his ceiling would be Kuechly and his floor would be Posluszny. I don't think he can be any worse than a really, really solid player that Posluszny was through his career.
There's something about Penn State and Boston College. It seems like every great linebacker comes from only two schools.
I can't speak for Boston College, but they call Penn State linebacker U for a reason.
Very nice.
So we go from the guys rushing the quarterback to the guy protecting them as the Chargers take Northwestern tackle Rashawn Slater, easily the first or second tackle in the draft. I don't know if you had a preference on taking him or the kid from Oregon, but how do you feel about this guy protecting your star new favorite player of all time in Justin Herbert?
Oh, yeah. What actually is really cool too, before I get to this pick, is that Micah Parsons crying, "I wanted to be with the Dallas Cowboys," reminds me of Justin Herbert when he was 6. He wrote a note to his first grade teacher, "I want to be a quarterback for the Chargers." I think that's just so cool. So it's like
that is awesome, yeah.
Herbert 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
He has a very similar draft profile to a Justin Herbert. Herbert is the guy that's raw, needs a couple of years to get, his fundamentals down, but he produced as well as anybody. Rashawn Slater is that type of guy, but Penei Sewell has the better measurables. He's bigger. He has more length. He has, a more crisp college tape. Rashawn Slater, though, against Chase Young, took him to task when they played Ohio State. So I think that Rashawn Slater is going to be a great player. And I think any team drafting outside of the top 5, 6, or 7 are just happy if they choose a guy that's going to be a starter for their team for the next 5 years, 5, 6, 7 years.
And he has a much better starting point. Obviously, the Chargers line is already good to great. It has its holes, which is why he was needed. But it's a lot easier to be a really talented rookie that comes into a line that's already really good. Whereas, like Detroit, for example, they're going to build around him. He's the first piece. Whereas for the Chargers case, Slater might be the last piece. So it's really when you bookend something instead of starting it. I think it's a much different story. So overall, great pick for the Chargers to, you get the quarterback last year, you get the guy to protect him this year. It's really a no-brainer. Next up, now we're going to kind of jump around here a little bit. So Mac Jones goes to the Patriots. Some people say he fell to 15. If you're me, I'm surprised that he was picked at 15. But I truly do believe that if anyone's going to make a successful quarterback out of Mac Jones, it is a Bill Belichick that actually has something to prove for once in about 10 years. So I don't know if this is going to work out necessarily. Is he it's not a guarantee, but like if you're a Mac Jones fan, which Nick by definition has to be because he's a Bama fan, is there a better spot for him to at least attempt to be successful? I think this is it.
The thing that sucks is that it very rarely happens. A great quarterback is supplanted by a great quarterback as he's signaled to be the next guy. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady has an incredible career in New England. And then Mac Jones is the first player that the team says, hey, take the keys and become a superstar, just like Tom Brady did. Maybe not quite as much expectations because they drafted him at 15, but it's still a top-level first-round quarterback. It brings me back to LaDainian. He is off to the Jets. Chargers draft Ryan Matthews. He was the best running back in the draft, according to many, and it didn't work out. And I think the pressure had a big reason to do with that. He was an Eagle, actually.
He was. I think he is again. I think we re-signed him as some depth recently. Oh, no, nice. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Jordan Howard. They wore the same number for us. So.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say.
Yeah. That was but no, he honestly he played okay for us back then. He really had a bit of a issue putting the ball on the ground for the Eagles. I think he would have. He showed a lot of great flashes, and then it would kill a drive. But yeah, it's very hard to replace the greatest running back easily of like his generation. I would say. Exactly. So it really does. It does matter, and like it helps a little bit that this isn't. For Mac Jones, it helps a little bit that it's not the year Brady left. It's been a year Cam Newton had to be that guy, the next guy to play for the Patriots. And I still think Cam Newton will be the starter day one kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, it's big shoes to fill, but they've done it in such a way that, it's a little bit easier to bet. It's still a tall tale for sure. I do want to touch real quick. The next pick happens to be Xavier Collins, the linebacker from Tulsa. To me, Arizona is going to be that most improved team of the year. I think they're going to make the playoffs, and I think they're going to go a little bit farther because they really got on everybody's radar last year when they beat Buffalo with the Hail Mary. Everyone thought that was the start of something. That was really kind of the peak of it. They kind of fizzled out after that, didn't make the playoffs. I think with all the guys that they've, gained in the offseason, and then a guy like this, so you talk about a tackling machine. I've watched him terrorize UCF for the past 3 years. And yeah, this is a sleeper good pick to me. I think a lot of people are going to know this name in the next year or two.
All right, you and me are on the same page. We're almost on the same page on pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Have we disagreed on one pick?
Nothing major, I don't think.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah,
you
nothing.
and me maybe we really should be on the Sports Jeopardy. I think he's going to be a great player too, Xavier Collins.
To jump around a little bit, we talked about the Clemson running back going to the Jaguars, so it's a similar thing with Lawrence having the comfortability there. Najee Harris going to the Steelers, and this was picked correct in just about every mock draft I've ever looked at. He just seemed like a Steeler. He was running like a Steeler and everything. And then the funnier thing towards the end of it is we talked about the Aaron Rodgers drama and how they're not really helping him with offensive weapons in the draft. And the Packers say, Aaron, we hear you, and we're going to draft a cornerback from Georgia in the first round this year. So it's just the joke that keeps on giving to me.
And Eric Stokes wasn't even the best corner production-wise at Georgia. He was the second best, so that's amazing. But Najee Harris, Steelers running back, remember that name. I think he's one of the late first-round steals of the draft. That guy is amazing. So
that concludes the first round, and we'll kind of jump around to some other guys that we like. For me, as an Eagles fan, for example, I was really hoping in that second round that it's not often, I said this before the show to Nick, there's not often that I'm I want this particular guy. I just want good players on my team. But this year we had this. In the second round, I'm we need to get Asante Samuel Jr. out of Florida State. His father is the greatest cornerback to play for the Eagles in my lifetime, as far as seeing his career beginning to end. That's no disrespect to guys like Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown, but there's not a better playmaking cornerback than Asante Samuel. As the second round kicked off, nobody's taking him. We're the 6th pick, I think, in the second round, and we pass on him. And that was when I threw my hands up. And it doesn't happen often. We ended up taking the center from Alabama, Landon Dickerson. And it's interesting. On some lists, he's listed as a center. On others, he's just listed as an offensive lineman. So I don't know if that means he was drafted to play center or not. So, that's two things.
He was a guard at Alabama. Leatherwood.
Yeah, I'm looking on ESPN, and he's listed as a center. So I don't really know. And to the victor goes the spoils, down a little ways. I'm just trying to see how far it is. The Chargers pick 47, 15th in the second round, pick up Asante Samuel Jr. And I'm glad he went to a team that it's not a Micah Parsons situation. And I think this is a huge pickup for you guys. I think the kid's going to be a star.
Yeah, no, I believe so too. He is just incredible, lengthy, really, really productive in college. I had 2 people that I believe were non-first round picks that should have been first round picks. He's one of them. The Browns picked up this linebacker from Notre Dame, Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah.
Yeah, he fell like a brick for reasons I still don't understand.
Yeah, me neither. So, you just look at what they did in college and it's just how. So, and it's amazing to me. I mean, the Chargers, I can just speak to the Chargers, and we had this conversation before the draft too. I think sometimes teams really, really try hard to pick the diamond in the rough, and they miss out on a guy who is going to be just a staple for a franchise for a long time to come. Chargers, a couple of rounds later, picked one of the most baffling players. He might end up working out. Trey McKitty, tight end from Georgia, had 4 catches, I believe, the entire season, and we picked him as a day 2 player. So
interesting.
I mean, it's amazing. NFL teams do this all the time, and sometimes it really works out. But there's a guy that just produced, that was just legit all year, and they end up, passing on him. Just ask Marlon Williams too. He has another guy.
Yeah, that's something I'll talk on here in a little bit. One interesting one to me was the last pick of the second round, Florida quarterback Kyle Trask going to the Buccaneers. To me, this isn't as much like the quarterback of the future as it is think like Ryan Mallett on the Patriots. He's going to be the backup there for a while. The guy doesn't – so, like, I was watching day 2 of the draft with my brother-in-law who is a Packers fan, and he is a Gator fan as well, and we were in the middle of doing something, and he stopped and stared at the screen when Trask got picked, and he said, in what world is he a second-round talent? Like, so, like, a Gator fan can tell you that. So that is a little interesting. You mentioned to me before, well, I'm going to brag about my UCF players here that got picked here in a minute, but you had the 5 players in the first that you think are going to be stars, and you have 5 steals that were taken after that. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can give us those 5 players.
Okay. All right. All right. You jumped on me really, really quick here. First of all, first round picks that I think are going to be really, really good, better than where they were drafted. We talked about this. Justin Fields, Chicago, Xavier Collins, 16, Arizona. And then I also believe Caleb Farley for Tennessee is pretty good. And then we also discussed about other late round guys like Najee Harris and whatnot. Non-first round guys too. I forget where some of these guys got drafted.
All right, I'll try and help you out.
Elijah Moore, wide receiver, Ole Miss. He was picked up late. Yeah, the Jets. North Dakota State, they're all offensive linemen. Dylan Redunce. I'm testing your I'm testing your draft finding skills. And then also Christian Barmore, Alabama defensive lineman. So those were my 5 guys.
Redunce went to Tennessee, it looks like here.
Went to Tennessee. Boy, I love the Titans draft.
You do, yeah.
Yeah. And Mike Vrabel coached football team. I'd say they're probably going to end up being pretty well coached too. So watch out, Tennessee.
Yeah. And then as a UCF former student, season ticket holder and everything, there was plenty of guys called the Knights way over the 3 days, and even one after the draft. First one being safety Richie Grant went early in the second round to the Falcons, a guy that in the right world, if you run this draft a couple more times, there's a chance that he goes in the first round, but he was a very early second round pick. What's interesting about a lot of my UCF guys that went this year is they all fit the mold of a story that we've heard all too often in the draft. Richie Grant is a perfect example of a guy that went to the Senior Bowl and just blew coaches away just at practice. And he didn't actually play in the game, but those 2 weeks of practices leading up, coaches absolutely fell in love with him. I think he went into those practices as like a 3rd round pick, ended up a 2nd round pick. So that's that guy. Aaron Robinson, a corner for the New York Giants. Here's the funny thing about this guy. This guy played 1 year at Alabama and then transferred to UCF. In any national televised game, he was still referred to as the Alabama transfer. Didn't matter how long he played at UCF. They had to throw out. And I guarantee you, the first interception he gets or whatever, it's gonna come up. They're gonna mention the Alabama transfer before UCF. But it's a guy who he's sneaky good. We had a little more playmaking corners, on the team, but he was the perfect nickel corner, and that's exactly what the Giants are looking for. So this is a guy that might pop in a year or two, probably going to make his bread and butter the first year on special teams. So he's going to be that kind of guy. Jacob Harris, wide receiver for the Rams. This is that guy that goes to the combine or the pro day and just blows everybody away. He's like 6'6", 6'5", something like that. Just big, lean. I'm trying to comp him to somebody at the moment. I can't think off the top of my head, but he's a guy that wowed people at pro days and stuff. So he was the 3rd or 4th receiver on our depth chart, but was the first receiver drafted in this draft, which is very interesting. Tay Gowin is an interesting story. He's a corner that went to Arizona. This is a guy that was a JUCO transfer that I always respect guys that have to go that route. Usually a little more dog in those guys that have to go through the junior college route. Played 1 year at UCF, was very good, ended up opting out for the COVID season, which, again, you can never really blame anybody for doing. And a lot of people were shocked that he wasn't picked till the 6th round. Jacob Harris, by the way, a 4th round pick, that he went all the way to the 6th round. But I understood why. There was only so much tape on him. Guys were only basing off of 1 year at UCF. I'm sure there wasn't a lot of junior college tape. What was there was great, but it wasn't a lot to go off of. So it didn't shock me. So he's that guy that there just wasn't a lot of tape on. And then Trey Nixon, 7th round receiver to the Patriots. Here's a guy that started the year off really great, was hurt in the second or third game of the year, and really only came back towards the end of the year. So this is the guy that, you know, has a lot of upside, but is dealing with an injury. So these are all tropes of players we've seen in the draft, and they all kind of fit a different one. And then after the draft, we have Marlin Williams, who was truly the best receiver on UCF last year. And interestingly enough, going undrafted, even though 2 receivers from his same team were drafted ahead of him, getting picked up by the Houston Texans. And his deal was like 3 years, $2.5 million, which is really good for an undrafted. That's roughly the equivalent of a 5th-round draft picks contract.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
for
whoever
sure.
his agent is, hats off to you, sir. But I'm very excited for these 5, count 6 with Marlin, new UCF players in the draft. And I wouldn't be shocked if a few other familiar faces get picked up for some rookie mini camps and stuff and hope to make team, especially in the running back room with Greg McCray and Otis Anderson and guys like that. So 5 is a school record for most guys drafted by the Knights in one season. So outside of watching where my Eagles, you know, who they picked up, seeing these Knights get saturated all over the NFL was a fun way to spend days 2 and 3 of the draft.
Yeah, I'm sure you got to feel pretty good. USC only had like 3 guys drafted, so you really took to task a lot of FBS schools. For those of you just a moment ago who are wondering, like, who is this kid telling me who's going to end up being a great player in the NFL? This little guy wearing a white collared shirt is going to tell me who's going to be great in the NFL. Well, I could give you receipts. Last year, I had 2 guys who I thought were going to be pretty nice steals. One of them was Brandon Ayuk. Too early to call if he's going to end up being a great player. And the other is Antoine Winfield Jr. And he's only played a year, and I'd say he's probably a pretty nice steal. So I'd like to think that I watch a lot of NFL and college films. So, I mean, you do too. And it's amazing. You know, I'm sure you looked at some of these, players across not just Central Florida, but the conference. And you're like, man, how does some of these guys fall like they do? You know, they just were great in college.
Like, I remember watching the Cowboys pick up the running back from Memphis, and I'm like, that guy's going to be real. I forget, his name escapes me right now, but in last year when Zeke was hurt, he played really well for them. So sometimes you just, you know, from watching your school battle these other teams, like, yeah, that guy's going to be a good pro and everything. So it's interesting what you pick up from osmosis.
Who is that guy's name? I'm going to have to look it up.
All right, yeah, go for it. But yeah, no, it is interesting how DJ Henderson or something. Henderson.
Yeah. Or CJ Henderson.
CJ, I was so close, one letter off. But yeah, CJ Henderson of Dallas. I've watched him play in a lot of those crazy games where UCF played Memphis. He was, you know, a star in that, what were often high scoring games. The one other thing I want to mention here about draft stories, you know, I've always said as a former long snapper myself, anytime a long snapper gets drafted, an angel gets its wings. And we had Alabama long snapper Thomas Fletcher get drafted in the 7th round by the Panthers. And have you seen this video? Do you know what I'm referring to here?
I am not. So
I'll have to send it to you after. But, you know, a lot of these guys, as the draft is winding down, they might get calls from their agent to say, hey, man, if you don't get drafted, I got like 3 teams I'm already talking to. So just you sit tight, like things are going to be all right. And I guess Mr. Fletcher has a relationship with a coach on the Panthers. And he calls him and says, hey, man, like, are we going to get you here in Carolina? And he thinks he's referring to, you know, like an undrafted contract situation. And he goes, yeah, man, I'm trying to get there. Like my agent's talking. He goes, no, you don't understand. You're coming. We just drafted you with our 7th pick. And he's like, you know, he's like, are you fucking serious? And he's, you know, it's amazing. And he's like, he's like, you coming? You on his way? And he's like, I'll walk my happy ass to Carolina if I need to. And he goes, you're going to walk? And he's like, no, dude, we're going to send you a car. Like, it's a really cool story. It's all done through the phone, so you don't see Fletcher talking, but you can hear it the whole time. And it's a really cool story. And, you know, awesome. I don't believe I could be wrong here. I like to talk about the kickers and punters as well. I don't recall any kickers and punters this year. I'm going to double check, but that long snapper story really hit home for me. I do see, the really big punter from Georgia Tech.
Florida State.
No, Georgia Tech. He's 5'11", 260. Presley Harvin III from Georgia.
Okay,
Tech.
it was Georgia Tech. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
the picture I was seeing, it looked like they were wearing almost Florida State colors.
They might have been playing Florida State in the picture because it is ACC. But that appears to be, I don't see any kickers in these late rounds. I think it was that one punter and then the one long snapper. Right. So the brand still makes an appearance in this draft, and I always appreciate seeing that. A rare fullback was taken here by fullback from Michigan, Ben Manson. That dying position that is the fullback. Always nice to see that too. But overall, this is a really entertaining draft. Cleveland, I thought, did a pretty good job of it. Like I was surprised a couple years ago how great Tennessee did, how good Nashville was as a location. And I believe next year they're going to do what they plan to do the COVID year in Vegas, and that's going to be a lot of fun as well.
Shout out to Pat McAfee, the greatest draft speech.
We didn't have too many of those this year. Drew Pearson kind of forgot where he was and just rambled on there for a bit. Mike Golick made a pick for the Eagles. That was pretty cool. To me, there wasn't as many memorable because, I mean, once Pat does that, like, what are you going to do? Like, you can't really follow that up, I guess. So they're like, why even try?
Exactly. I thought it was so weird though, having the best fan of every team sit in that couch.
That was
and then some of the fans who were talking to Roger Goodell, it's like, what could you possibly be saying that lasts like a minute?
Yeah.
Stopping this dude from announcing that, like, what could you possibly tell the commissioner? Hey, could you let me go up next? I don't know what in the world they're talking about.
That's good. Yeah, that couch thing seemed weird to me too. Like, I don't know that I cared much for that.
Maybe have a couple of fans stand right behind Goodell. I think that'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But just one fan sitting there in a couch in a chair.
So hopefully that doesn't come back to me. That didn't really land. But the rest of it, Cleveland, I think you did. After a year of doing the draft from Goodell's basement with his M&Ms to being in a Cleveland, I think it was great. And I think Vegas is going to be pretty awesome for next year's too.
Almost makes me want to go there and watch it.
Hey, you're close. You're close enough that it's a possibility. I know they're going to do the thing where they like put the guy on a ferry and they bring him out to the stage or whatever. That was what they were planning last year.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's going to be pretty cool. And I think the year after, I don't know if they planned it ahead. I like these, location drafts. Philly was great. Dallas was good. Nashville was way better than I expected it to be. Cleveland held out, but I kind of missed the Radio City Music Hall. It was in there in New York for so long. I hope it gets in the rotation. We get like that throwback era every 5, 6, 7 years where they do it out of there. But for now, because eventually you're going to run out of destinations, you're going to have to double back anyway. So at least keep New York. At least keep New York in the Radio City Music Hall. Because I've been to New York a handful of times and I've walked by and I don't know what else goes on in that building. But when I see that building, to me, that's the draft building. I don't know what else goes on in there, but that's, for me and a lot of sports fans, that's going to be the legacy of that venue. So, I'd like if they keep it in the rotation. But other than that, I think that's going to wrap us up here. Thanks, Nick, for joining us, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.